What's going on, gardeners? It's Wednesday, May 4th, and it is getting hot here on the southeastern coast of North Carolina. Today, I'm going to show you all how to water your garden for free using rainwater and a gravity-fed drip irrigation system. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell to receive new video notifications, and check out our Amazon storefront and spread shop in the video description for a list of the gardening products I use and awesome custom designed apparel and other gear. Your support is greatly appreciated. In one of my previous videos, I made a complete guide on how to install rain barrels in your yard so you could collect free rainwater off your roof and down your rain gutters and use that to irrigate your garden. And I will make sure to link that video above in case you want to see it, because it is a very detailed installation guide. I have been collecting rainwater for years to use in my garden using these rain barrels, and it has been absolutely fantastic. In a follow-up video shortly thereafter, I made a complete guide on installing drip irrigation to your raised bed garden from these rain barrels, and I will make sure to link to that complete guide as well. I showed you how to run the mainline tubing and how to install all of the individual drippers and drip line to your various plants. When I originally installed these rain barrels, I thought I would have to install some kind of pump in order to get the water from these rain barrels over to my garden, because I thought that the head pressure in the system would not be enough to feed my entire garden with gravity. Now, head pressure, in case you don't know, is the amount of pressure into the system that is caused by the weight of the water at a height above the measuring point. And what do I mean by that? Well, have you ever thought why town water supplies are kept very high up in an overhead water tower? That's because that water at a very, very high altitude above the actual distribution points creates thousands, if not millions of pounds of pressure. And that pressure, solely due to gravity, is what powers the water mains. And that is why even when your electricity goes out, your town water supply is still active if you are fed with a town water supply, because that head pressure in the system from gravity is so high, it is enough to feed the entire town. And that's why I installed these rain barrels on concrete blocks. I wanted to get my rain barrels off the ground at an elevation significantly higher than my garden itself, so the gravity force itself would be enough to propel the water into the system. But I didn't think that just a few blocks would quite be high enough for my purposes. But I was actually wrong, and I will show you. This rain barrel is the lower barrel in my system, and I set it up like this on purpose as the lowest barrel because I wanted to be able to isolate it so it would fill up first, because this is the supply of water to my garden. And I also wanted to be able to mix fertilizer in this barrel, which is something I will be able to show you how to do at the end of this video. So I am simply going to turn the switch on, and then I will show you the effects of gravity in my garden. And to give you an overall perspective of my yard, here are the rain barrels, and then you can see how my yard gently slopes down to the garden. And pretty much all backyards will slope down naturally from the house. They do that on purpose when grading the yard to wash the water away from your foundation. So I'm going to show you the effects of gravity from that slight slope in my yard paired with the additional height of the concrete blocks. And you'll also notice right here I bought additional concrete blocks because I'm going to further raise my rain barrels to increase the head pressure, and we will be able to gauge how much that additional roughly 1 foot of height will give me in terms of pressure to my drip irrigation system. So currently my drip irrigation distribution line runs around my entire garden like this. It runs counterclockwise. So if you spin around the entire garden like so, these drippers right here are the final drippers in the system. And you can see right now the kind of pressure that I'm getting out of my purely gravity-fed drip irrigation system. You will see that I am getting dripping. It will eventually deplete the entire barrel at this rate. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let the barrel drain completely because it's way too heavy to lift right now. And then after I put it up on another block, you will be able to see the difference in pressure in the system. And to give you a little bit of a comparison shot, this is the very first dripper in my system, so it is getting more water pressure than the last dripper in my system. So I'm going to do a little side-by-side shot of the first dripper in my system on the left versus the last dripper on my system in the right. and you can see how the flow rates slightly benefit the first dripper in the system. So we're going to try to correct that with additional head pressure due to gravity. I've had these rain barrels installed for 2 seasons now, and we've been in drought for several months here on the southeastern coast of North Carolina. So I used this opportunity to tear down my rain barrels, scrub them from any of the muck or debris that have accumulated over the past 2 seasons, and then increase the vertical height to try and increase the pressure of the gravity system to my garden. So the system has now been increased 1 foot in height, and since I increased the height of the system, I actually went away for a 1-week vacation, and while I was away, we finally got about 1.5 inches of rain, and now the barrels are 100% full. Now that they're completely full, we're going to turn on the system and we're going to test what kind of difference we got in flow rate to the drip emitters now that they have been installed higher. So just like before, we're going to turn our drip irrigation system on. And right here is the final drip emitter in the system. This is the last plant in the system, so now we can do an exact side-by-side comparison on how that final dripper is dripping right now with the additional 1 foot in height to the rain barrel system versus what it looked like before at the original rain barrel height. And I can tell right away there is a dramatic increase in how quickly this drip emitter is dripping. So I'm really excited to say that raising the rain barrel 1 foot really added a tremendous amount of pressure to the lines, and the system overall appears to be functioning much better. All of the drip emitters in the system are really looking good. I'm really impressed. They are functioning much better than they were before with this additional 1 foot of height. So I think overall this is a pretty big improvement to the system, and it goes to show you how well gravity actually works when building a drip irrigation system. But here's what I really wanted to know. Now, I was pretty confident that I would be able to have pretty decent pressure moving over to my raised garden beds because they are significantly below the height of the barrel. What I was curious was, would this be enough head pressure to run all the way over to my container garden drip irrigation system that I just installed, which I will link to above. So these are significantly higher in terms of height than the raised bed garden, so it's going to take a lot more pressure in order for these drip irrigators to work. So you can hear the lines clearing. The air is trying to be pushed out, so we're going to give this a minute for everything to settle, and we'll see what kind of flow rate we get to the drip emitters. Alright, all of the air has been cleared out of the lines of the system, and what I'm seeing has me absolutely thrilled. These are my fig trees at the very end of the drip irrigation line, and they are getting really solid pressure. As you can see, they are dripping very well, and I'm just thrilled by what I'm seeing. I'm so happy to see that there is enough pressure in the system for all of these drip emitters to work just fine. And while the dripping is definitely slower than at the raised garden beds, which is to be expected because the emitters are both at a higher elevation and a greater distance, I'm still getting really good flow to all of the emitters. So it will take a little bit more time to water these trees, but that's no big deal because we're not using any electricity, we're not paying for any water, so we have all the time in the world. They'll drip a little more slowly, but they are working just great. In fact, the pressure to the system is so good that it's even reaching all the way over here to my garden TP, which is the furthest point in my system. So the fact that that is happening and that these drippers are working at a really great flow rate, well, I just couldn't be happier because you can see just how far away the rain barrels are versus where I'm standing right now. So really good pressure to the system. Now that we know that the rain barrels have more than enough water pressure in order to reach every single drip emitter in my system, I'm now going to show you how to use the water barrels to fertilize the entire drip irrigation system. And to do that, I'm going to use this soluble Jax 20-20-20 general purpose fertilizer. Now you must use water soluble fertilizer to do this because it has to dissolve 100% so it doesn't clog your drip irrigation lines. And for this to work properly, I strongly recommend these crystallized water soluble fertilizers like this. No, they are not organic. Yes, they are naturally derived. No, they will not harm your soil. They will not harm your plants as long as you use them as directed and you don't abuse them. In fact, I don't want to use organic soluble fertilizers in this drip irrigation system because it's not possible to drain these barrels 100%, and I don't want organic material in there rotting and fermenting and turning into gunk and stinking up the system. That's why I'm only going to use these water-soluble types like your Jax 20-20-20 and your Miracle-Gro crystals. So, in order to fertilize them, I'm taking this 1 cup measuring cup that I just get a ring of them for 99 cents at Walmart, and I use them for gardening, and I'm going to dump this inside the water barrel, and that is 1 cup of fertilizer that is dumped into about 60 gallons of water. Then I'm just going to take a big stick and I'm going to stir it around until it is 100% dissolved. And that's really all there is to it. Then once it's dissolved, we will turn on our drip irrigation system and distribute that to all the lines in the garden. Now the fertilizer has been stirred in and completely dissolved inside that rain barrel, and I have it pumping to the perimeter beds where all my indeterminate tomatoes, cucumbers, zucchini, and other cucurbits are planted around the perimeter of my garden. I have my garden isolated to 3 separate zones. The perimeter beds are zone 1. That is getting all of that fertilizer right now. Later, I will turn off zone 1, and then I will turn on zone 2, which will fertilize the rectangular beds that you see right here that have drip lines all installed on them. Then if I chose to, I could turn off zones 1 and 2 and only turn on zone 3, which would be the container garden that I showed you earlier, and I would be able to fertigate the individual containers using the drip emitters. And that is how easy, simple, and convenient this method is. Using that 1 rain barrel, I can fertilize my entire garden using gravity, and I never have to worry about any kind of electricity to do it. After experimenting with drip irrigation for 2 years in my garden, I am now a huge believer in its efficiency. The even watering is everything when it comes to getting great results in your garden, and you can see the results right here. I mean, just look at the incredible production that I'm getting on all of these tomatoes. It is just unbelievable. It is amazing. And no, this plant right here is not a fluke. This is not my best plant that I'm showing you. They all look like this. The results are incredible across the board. You will get great fruit set, especially when you incorporate the water-soluble fertilizers. They work fantastic. Do not fear them. This is not a fluke. And as you can see right here, I'm starting to get some of my first ripe tomatoes of the year. This is a super sweet 100 tomato, and I'm so excited to try it on camera. This is the official kickoff of tomato season. Unbelievable. Unlike anything you will get from a grocery store, it is so much better to grow your own. Make sure you do it. Over the years, many of you have asked me why I have my rain barrels installed at different heights and why I don't just install them at the exact same elevation. And that's because when you install your rain barrels in an array at the exact same elevation, they effectively act as one single rain barrel. And I don't want that. I want them installed in sort of a master and slave orientation where when it rains, this rain barrel fills up first because it's at the lowest point of gravity. So all the rain, when both hoses are open, will favor that barrel. And then when they're all full, I want to be able to turn off the connection point between the 2 barrels, isolate this, mix the fertilizer into this, and then run it out to my garden, then open the valves and refeed the lower barrel with the higher barrel because this is mostly empty now and this is still completely full. So now that I have drained that barrel, I'm going to show you exactly how that works. So now I'm going to show you what will happen when I open the lower valve. And what will happen is this lower valve will be able to fill up the barrel about 2/3 of the way using the water pressure because this barrel is lower. This is exactly why you don't want both barrels to be at the exact same elevation, because if that's the case, this fertilizer could actually backfeed into the other barrel. Because that first main master barrel that I referred to is at a much higher elevation, all of the pressure is going to come from that higher elevation. So it is going to prevent any of that fertilizer from backfeeding into the barrel, and at the same time, that head pressure is going to be able to overcome gravity and fill up this barrel most of the way. So this will get me to about 2/3 of the way full. I'll put in about a half a cup of fertilizer, and then I will fertilize my rectangular beds with this. This is how far gravity alone filled up the rain barrel. We are more than halfway there and rising. And that is how ridiculously easy it is to use rain barrels and gravity to irrigate and fertilize your garden. Now, as I mentioned, I have created complete in-depth guides for installing rain barrels as well as running drip irrigation to a garden, a raised bed garden, and container gardens. And I have an in-depth playlist that I will link to in the video description as well as above, so you can consult that whenever you need to install any of these drip irrigation types. It is very simple. It does take a little bit of time, but you will save an enormous amount of time in the long run, and it couldn't be any easier once it's all set up, and it delivers incredible results. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you're notified when we release more videos like these. If you're curious about any of the parts I used in this video or in my garden in general, again, they are all linked down in my Amazon storefront link and the Drip Depot affiliate link, so check them out. And while you're there, check out my Spreadshop link in the video description for custom merch if you want to support the channel. Thanks again so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video. We are almost to our destination in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and Dale is he's so tired, but he wants to see what's going on because he's never been here before, and his eyes are barely open. He's fallen asleep in a choke position. He's been so good this entire car ride. You are such a good boy, Mr. Wet Nose. You're such a good boy.